We'll be talking today largely about an extraordinary novel called Pre-Incarnate. And even though I have read it twice now and laughed uproariously on both occasions, I've still got a few slight problems with the plot that I thought you could possibly talk me through.
Sure, no, that's why I'm here.
Yes, so
I'm here.
You go for it, Shaun.
All right.
So we start with Alexander Pruitt.
Yes.
Who was in fact murdered in 2005.
Yes, correct.
Then Pre-Incarnates, his soul. I think you'll take it over. You can take it over from here.
Oh, okay. Right. Well, I will explain. Has anyone read it, incidentally? Anyone read it? 1, 2, 3. All right. We might get you to. If I make a mistake, just yell out. What I've done. Well, I expected you to read it, Fran Berry. All right. Now, I would like to. I'll give you a brief thumb. Let me just by way of introduction explain that this is, this is not a comedy novel. This is com-lit. This is literature, all right? Because we have the 17th century, we have, Daniel Defoe would have been the... Yes, do you think?
Yes.
You agree with that one?
Yes.
18th century...
You're push-polling me here, but yes.
Yes, 18th century, I don't know. Look, who do you think, 18th century, who would be the premier writer in the 18th century? English language. Anybody? Samuel Johnson, that's good. All right. 19th century, Dickens, of course. Who else? Would there be? 20th century, Gretel Colleen, clearly. 21st century, me. All right. So that's how it works, essentially. Because and this book is as important, I think, as the Gutenberg Bible. And when I say the Gutenberg Bible, I mean the Steve Gutenberg Bible, which came out to publicise Police Academy, which is a fine film. What's that? You want me to play saxophone? A trombone? Sit back from the microphone. Oh, right. Okay, there we go. You still hear me? Oh, clearly not. And I enjoy good books. I enjoy Doug. Let me tell you, there's nothing I enjoy more. I'm getting rid of all the jokes before we start the conversation. There's nothing I enjoy more than curling up in front of the fire with a Bryce Courtney and throwing it in. That's how much I enjoy good books. But this is a story about a man who gets murdered, and yes, indeed, as Doug said, he pre-incarnates 300 years earlier into the body of Oliver Cromwell's son, Richard. And he finds himself at home there, but he doesn't really belong. So he puts himself in suspended animation, arranges through Masonic ritual to have himself reawoken about a week before he's murdered. And he's going to stop his own murder. Of course, if he stops his own murder, then the pre-incarnated he, will cease to exist. So herein is the quandary. So that's it in a nutshell. I hope I haven't spoiled it for you. Oh, I should have said spoilers. Spoilers ahoy. But that's it. I won't tell you how it ends, though.
Oh, I will.
All right. Actually, there is a. We had
how
it
ends.
We had a few pages.
So does Ridley Scott.
We had a few pages left over at the end, and there was a. I just made some books up that are coming soon. Can I read you this? I'll read you this. This is called Possum Proofing the Poetry. This is a new book that's coming out. Move over, A.D. Hope. There's a new kid in the hood, and he wants to bust a rhyme in your arse. And here's a poem. A poet who came from the Rhine did not find it easy to rhyme. He started off well, but by the end you could tell he'd lost interest in the whole thing. It wasn't even bothering with metre. It's got everything, this book. And then some. And
no profanity. Oh, one bit, but it's a very small font. It's tiny.
It's in a footnote.
Yeah, it's a footnote.
It's in a footnote.
That's okay.
Mm-hmm. It's fuck.
I thought we weren't going to do that.
Oh, sorry.
That's a fairly simplistic view, I think, Shaun.
Do you think?
Of the book. What impresses me is the way you managed to time jump through various exciting parts of history. For example, we end up in the catacombs. And I'm not saying this because I've been there, but I have, in France. In d'Enfer Rochereau, I've actually been there. And you set a very violent scene.
I do.
In there.
I do. Well, it's an ossuary, as you know.
I did know that, yeah.
Did
you think it's a basket weaver, don't you? No, an ossuary. I didn't. I know what an ossuary is.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I blew it up in this book. It's fiction because you can do anything you want. But it does still exist, doesn't it?
Oh, it's still there.
Yeah, see, and I'm glad that you pronounced it, because I have only ever read that word, read that title, so I wouldn't have been able to do it.
I was crapping on. I didn't think it was right at all. But yes, you've created various parts of history that little dramas are playing out. For example, in that catacomb, we also meet the birth of. Do we meet the birth of Moriarty, the legend of Moriarty there?
Yes, it's because. Basically, I know about 5 periods in history, and I was trying to think of a novel that would enable me to stitch them all together, just to show off. So I thought time travel was the best way to do it. But yes, in this case, we do pop up in Victorian London, which is my favourite time in London, I suppose, Victorian London. And Conan Doyle and H.G. Wells, we find out who the real Jack the Ripper is, I suppose.
Yes.
Kind of.
No, I won't.
Yeah, we find out who Jack the Ripper is. Oddly enough, by the time I got to this bit of the novel, I was getting a bit tired, so I've only basically, sketched out very vaguely the characters. But you know who Queen Victoria is. You don't need a footnote for that, do you? We all know who Queen Victoria is. We know who H.G. Wells is.
9 kids, ruled in German, yes.
Although I should point out that H.G. Wells does die in this book and never writes any of his novels. It's very irresponsible of me.
It starts beautifully atmospherically. It reminds me a little of Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I wondered if you feel you owe a debt to him at all.
I do. I think there was a few writers that I came across when I was probably about 14, 15, 16. I suspect that probably Hitchhiker's Guide as a radio serial would have hit the airwaves, I'm guessing, in about 1978. 77?
You are guessing.
Puts me down. That's about right, though, wasn't it? 15?
Yeah.
I was about 15 or 16, I suppose.
I was older.
And you always will be.
Thank you.
And the book came out, I think, the next year, a little paperback from Pan Macmillan, and that was a very influential book. And I continued to buy the Douglas Adams books, but never read them. I only ever read the first one. I couldn't get through the other ones for some reason. I only read the first one. And really, for me, it's sort of all over in the first book.
It is, and it's very much over in the 6th book, where he didn't actually write it.
Someone else is writing it.
Owen Colfer came along and did a very, very bad thing. Oh. But no, the first 2, you can really. I think you can probably stick those together, and that to me is almost like an archetypal guide to writing comedy. That's the Hitchhikers and the Restaurant at the End of the Universe seem to me to be the one book.
Yeah.
And the rest is tosh.
Yeah. I think you're right. But I don't know whether this is right or not. But I've always been under the impression that the ideas were the things that sustained Douglas Adams' books, and not so much the characters. The characters are very archetypal characters and very Python-esque in a way, and the ideas are the important thing, I think, when you're not worrying too much about plot.
But it does work. It actually, I did read this twice, because the first time I'm on beta blockers, so I thought that it must have been some sort of negative reaction I was having. Didn't make any sense. But then I read it the second time. Oh yes, of course, that makes perfect sense. I know what all these characters. Well, most of it I understand. I like the fact there is no TARDIS. You don't have a kind of a little device for travelling in time.
No, I didn't want to do that. I felt that because it's time travel, obviously, is the important thing about this book, and I didn't want to use magic, and I didn't want to use, because I think in time
there is some magic though.
There is a little bit of magic.
The Widow Makepeace.
In terms of using, a little bit of magic in there, but not too much, and no machine at all, because I absolutely love Back to the Future, and I didn't want to tread on the toes of that, because I think that's pretty much perfect, that story. Apart from a couple of problems I have, which if anyone asks me, I will bore you.
Don't.
I will bore you with an explanation
Please.
as to where the major flaws are.
Please
in this
don't.
particular book.
But it was a nice DeLorean. Okay, this is should we move on? I mean, I do love the book, but I'd like you to read a part of it.
Oh, well, I'd be more than happy to. I was actually sort of sneaking, because I should point out, one of the features of this book is this beautiful ribbon, which doubles as a bookmark, and I've actually lost the place I was going to read. So you can ask me another question if you like while I just skim through and find the bit.
Did Kerry Ann Kennelly read the book?
Look, the interview was probably about 35 seconds, I think, and I suspect she'd read the flap here. That's about as much as she'd read. But
you're still looking, aren't you?
I am still.
You can't find it.
I can't find it. Hang on.
Do you think that Do you think that your audience will be, how can I put this? Do you think that it will find a whole lot of new fans? Or, I mean, you've already got quite a lot, but...
I don't know, really. I don't know. I think it's it's, you know, it's my sense of humour, I suppose, and if you like my sense of humour from the TV shows... Has anyone seen any of the TV shows? Thank you very much, sir. I don't know, it's stuff that I find funny. And I must admit, whenever I attempt anything on television, Doug, as you well know, I'm incapable of doing anything other than just writing something that I think's amusing. I'm not very good at, you know, following some commercial wave that's coming. I can never see the next wave. I can never do that. Even with talking about your generation, which is as commercial a beast as I've ever attempted to ride. It's getting pretty strange now, and I suspect
it is.
I suspect next year will be it. Yes, I know.
Look, I'm sorry. Was Amanda Keller ever going to end up in the porridge? Come on now.
Well, she was supposed to be, but amazingly she managed to hang on to the thing.
She wasn't going in.
No, I know there was never any intention not to dump her in there. I mean,
you found the...
You know, we brought the gun on and we didn't shoot it, you know. I was very disappointed.
Parigi was that segment, for those of you who were watching the show. Shaun, you're still looking at it.
Yeah, I'll find it in a second.
No, I can
have a chat.
I can just witter away here forever. That's true, actually, and I like that about this book too. But I hate to say, Shaun, I think you're going to get a lot of new fans who are science fiction fans.
Oh, good.
Oh, good. Oh, right. That's all right.
That's good. No, I'd be happy with that. And I'd be interested, because you've read a lot of science fiction, I'd be interested to hear whether anybody thinks, oh, this has already been done before.
It has.
Has it?
In the Bible.
Ah.
No, really, there's a theory that Jesus...
Yeah.
There are pre-incarnates of Jesus in the Old Testament.
Oh, yes, because he pops up and says hello to John the Baptist, doesn't he?
The thing is, though...
He does.
If he did the same trick as Alexander Pruitt and then sort of knew what was going to happen and then thought, I don't want to go on the cross, it would kind of sort of wouldn't work then, would it? I mean, the whole born-again thing would be...
No. Well, you know, if there's any sort of serious ideas that I had, I suppose it's buried a bit, but it's about there's a limited number of souls that can you know, pop into the next life, because, you know, we're living longer and there's more of us, and surely, you know, you can't invent new souls, so you have to dragoon into service you know, E. coli, the souls of E. coli. And they have to go through a number of life cycles in order to purify themselves so they can become one with God. So this seems to be a nice way of avoiding that. If you can be pre-incarnated rather than reincarnated, then it's great recycling. You're just going back in time and living someone else's life, and it's a good use of the souls, you see. That's sensible. Anyway, I found it now. Shall I read it?
Please do.
Shall I? All right, this is a little piece, this is from chapter 8. This is where the narrator, who's more or less me, I suppose, is trying to search for some clues, because there's a historian. It's a detective novel really here, I suppose. It's not so much a whodunit as a whydunit. And he goes and visits he visits this gentleman. Here we are. And I'll read it to you now. As I wasn't due at the Charles de Gaulle Airport, that's Charles de Gaulle Airport, for another couple of hours, I decided to drop by the Bibliothèque du National de France and visit Jean-Noël Généré. Jean-Noël turned out to be none other than the president of the Bibliothèque, a fussy little man with a bald head, horn-rimmed spectacles, and a luxuriant black moustache. He greeted me warmly upon entering his office and offered me a seat, but turned a little frosty when I told him I was a writer seeking answers to a mystery. He didn't trust writers of that type, he said. I asked him why. Matthew Riley, he sniffed. He came in here researching that thing of his, you know. He interrupted his own sentence with a dismissive wave of the hand. 7 ancient wonders? No. 6 sacred stones? No, you know the one. What is it? Jean-Noël was clicking his fingers to me to spur my memory. The 5 greatest warriors? No. Area 7, Ice Station? No. He clicked some more. Hell Island? No. That online hover racer thing? Jean-Noël snorted derisively and gave up. Well, whatever it was dreadful. Full of cliches and riddled with hackneyed synonyms. Contest, I suddenly remembered. Jean-Noël nodded sadly. Yes, that's the one. He threaded his hands together. He wanted special access to our rare acquisitions room. He paused a moment, rose from his chair and walked to the window, hands now behind his back, his 2 fists knocking together. When next he spoke, it was in a voice overcome with emotion. He was only in there an hour with our Gutenberg Bible, And when the guard came in, Jean-Noel's voice broke off as he choked on his words. I fetched him a small paper cone of water from the cooler, and when he had regained his composure, he smiled at me with some embarrassment. Clutching the back of his antique Madison swivel chair, he continued, "He had eaten his sandwiches over it." Jean-Noel hissed in a whisper. The little man draped the back of his hand over his forehead in a gesture of disbelief worthy of Barrymore. "Leviticus was covered in the crumbs." Well, I can assure you, Mr. President, that I would never think of doing such a thing. And there was a coffee ring. I shook my head sympathetically, at a loss for words. "We had him beaten, of course." I cocked an incredulous eyebrow, mine. The President smiled. The President smiled knowingly and gave his chair an impressive spin. He was a man back in control. Yes, Charles Aznavour and his friends were more than happy to impress upon Monsieur Riley what happens when one commits an infraction of the rules here at the Bibliothèque Nationale de France. Charles Aznavour, the singer? Jean-Noel spun his chair again, and when it came to a stop, he shrugged gallically. "Is there any other?" Well, he must be 80 years old. Jean-Noel was spinning his chair around and around now as it rose higher and higher and eventually unscrewed itself from its base. We both watched in silence as it clattered to the floor. "He is 81, said Jean-Noel with a sniff, "but he can swing a wheelbrace at a man's knees with unerring accuracy." Oh, I had no idea. Why do you think he was awarded the Légion d'honneur in 1997? It was my turn to shrug. "It certainly wasn't because of his singing," scoffed Jean-Noel. "Sometimes Sacha Distel accompanies him. They're quite a team, wonderful to watch. Distel holds the transgressor from behind, and Aznavour punches them repeatedly in the stomach until they apologize. I don't approve of the methods, but one cannot argue with the results. We have only been sued successfully once, by P.D. James. Aznavour's torching of her house was, shall we say, a little too enthusiastic." "Well, Matthew is only young. I hope they went easy on him." "Killed by a car bomb," announced Jean-Noel matter-of-factly. "Gosh, I quite agree. Personally, I abhor violence. Such measures were unheard of 20 years ago. If you told me it would take Charles Aznavour, Sacha Distel, and 15 kilos of C4 to bring home to people the need to treat library books with respect, I would have sent you away with a flea in your ear. I don't know what has happened to the old values." God, this man was boring. Yes, I know what you're thinking. Surely not all our modern authors are so cavalier in their disregard for the etiquette of the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, and of course you are right. Jean-Noel peered at me over his horn rims. Dan Brown. Now, there was a gentleman. 6 weeks he spent in here copying out the Holy Blood and Holy Grail, and not so much as a crease in a page. A beautiful man, such lustrous hair and haunting aquamarine eyes. He gestured to the fireplace, over which hung a large frame photograph of the billionaire Da Vinci Code author, signed personally to Jean-Noel. "Look at that chin. It is the chin of a genius." He ran his finger down the cleft of his own and mourned its inadequacy. "Mind you, I thought Digital Fortress was a piece of shit." That gives you a bit of a taste, sure. Anyway.
We'll be taking questions in just a couple of minutes, so if you'd like to get those ready, while I ask you a little more about your previous book, which I also enjoyed very much, Smithereens.
Smithereens, yes. Well, Smithereens was back in 2004. It's not really a book. This isn't really the first book. This is a novella. Not a novel, it's a novella. It's 2 words short, apparently, of actually being a novel. If only I'd written the end. But there was an anthology of things that I'd written, sketches and plays and pieces for newspapers, and that was my first experience of being bound and having a cover and having my face on it and everything. That was good fun. But apparently it's coming out again next year, which would be interesting.
It's in January, 31st January, just in time for Christmas. It's a penguin. This, you will not fail to notice, is an absolutely stunning-looking book. I'm sorry to do that, because that's what people do when they haven't actually read it. But I did read it twice, and I still love the way it looks. The ribbon's awfully good. The marbling, end papers, marbling.
Yeah, look, it's got ex libris,
yes,
folks.
From the library of, and the beautiful illustrations too.
Yes, it's been very remiss of me not to mention Bill Wood. The illustrations are this is the books I used to love reading. They're like 1940s, 1930s boys' own adventure books, I suppose. pictures, and they help fill in, because the story is very hard to follow, so those pictures are essential.
Tell me how much of that is your influence. To me, that book screams Shaun. Well, not screams. It perhaps whispers Shaun Micallef at me.
The drawings?
Not so much. Just the whole. I mean, the whole idea of having
write it, Doug.
An Edwardian. No, I mean, but you know, a hardback and
I know,
and marbling and all that.
This book is about books. You know, this is because I do love reading books, and I know that doesn't mean I necessarily can write one. I know just because I can get drunk doesn't mean I know how to make wine. I understand that, but one of my favourite books as a kid was The Incredible Adventures of Professor Brainstorms. Anyone ever read that? Every time I mention it, no one goes, "What?" No,
Norman Hunter.
Norman Hunter, wonderful, wonderful book, and Heath Robinson did the illustrations for that. And even though it was 1940, I think the book came out, it still had a 19th century feel to it. It's just this is the sort of artifact, this sort of thing that you don't have with an e-book. You know, you don't have an e-ribbon. You know, you don't have an e-ribbon, and it was part of this is one of the reasons, and if not, well, it's one of the reasons that Hardie Grant was such a wonderful partner in this, is that they embraced wholeheartedly the idea of making a book for people who love books.
I have to ask then, when you gave the manuscript to the editor, did they attempt at all to make it simpler? Or did they want you to make it simpler? Well,
yeah, it was unusual because, as I understand it, what you do these days is you pitch a book, not picture book. You pitch a book to a publisher, and then you work with the publisher on the way. But this is different because I'd written it over 7 years and it was sort of done. And there was a few suggestions which were very sensible suggestions to actually make it understandable. I thought that was a good idea. So it did undergo a number of redrafts afterwards, but
with some very funny footnotes describing the process.
Yeah, there's a lot of footnotes now. There's a lot of footnotes. You know, there was a suggestion. Perhaps people might not know who Lou Costello is mentioned here. People might not know who Lou Costello is. So rather churlishly, I did a footnote saying that Lou Costello was the mayor of New York in 1855 and has a green beard, and I refer to Wikipedia. Most of my footnotes are from Wikipedia, apparently.
But they're wrong.
They are wrong, and it doesn't help at all. So the whole idea of having the footnotes that help explain things just actually makes it worse.
There's a magnificent picture of an invisible college, which really does exist, only it's not an invisible college.
It's not really an invisible college.
It's time for a look. It's been a delight, Shaun. You'll be signing copies of that, I'm sure, very many down the back of the room in a short while. But let's have some questions from the audience. I'm sure you wish to grill the silver-haired fox.
No. Okay.
Not a sausage. I can't actually see anyone, so I've got my glasses on.
Yes, madam.
Are they stereotyping you as science fiction? Is that what you said?
I don't know. The question is, I guess, what section of the bookshop is this appearing in? Somebody told me that they found it in cookery. And I'm not sure. Well, Fran, what is it?
There is a literary award for science fiction and fantasy, and they've actually called for us to nominate, to put the book in for the award.
A literary award? A literary award? Wow.
But I wouldn't necessarily put it there. But
What would you call it, Fran? You're in charge of Hardie Grant. If you had your druthers, where would it go? Would it go in? Best-selling fiction.
Best-selling fiction. Oh, yeah. What a lovely publisher.
I don't know. There's not a lot of science in it, I suppose.
Well, there isn't much science
fantasy,
in a Neil Gaiman book either. But there are. I actually like yours better than Neil Gaiman, and I like you as a person more than Neil Gaiman as well.
Thank you, Doug.
He assaulted me with a chair.
It's not in the humour section. I think it goes in the humour. It's not like a joke book or anything.
Well, that's the thing. It's not. But there are some tremendously funny bits. As soon as Gaff appears, the character called Gaff, who has a certain problem with his wooden legs that I find hysterically funny and won't tell you about. It's awfully good. You will laugh out loud, but it's not pure comedy from start to finish.
No. So I think ideally it should be in every section of the bookshop. Maybe exclusively, at the expense of all other books.
7 years, Shaun, that's a long time, and I believe you actually lost an awful lot of the first draft.
Yes, I did. I lost my laptop, very early laptop I had.
How much did you lose?
Well, I lost the laptop, so the whole...
Well, the whole...
what I'd written up to that point was gone.
Just the top line of the keys. Just quit a yo-yo. So,
but that was
90%, would you say?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I had the advantage of having worked it out by then, so maybe that was a good thing. I had to think it was a good thing.
Yeah, of course.
It took me another year really to come back to it and
you poor thing.
and write it out from scratch again. But then I did it in longhand, and that was much better. Because I'm 48, I'm used to writing in longhand anyway. Because that's how I grew up. That's how I think. And I quite like the archaeology of seeing something I've crossed out. I think, well, I know that's on page back here somewhere. And I don't really have that spatial memory when I'm looking at my screen. I can't really scroll through, and I don't know where things are. So I know that's not the case for younger people, but I much prefer writing stuff out in longhand.
A piece of paper never tells you Windows has unexpectedly closed down. There's at least one word in that sentence which probably shouldn't be there, I think. Any more questions for Mr. Micallef? This is a very, very rare occasion. He doesn't go out that much. So please.
Sir.
How much consideration was there between trying to use real historical facts and sort of playing with them, like, for example, Richard Cromwell, and I don't think, was he actually dying, or those sort of things?
Well, he did die. Yeah, he did die eventually.
Not at the time that you.
Okay, but the thing was, he was going to leave the Republic basically to his son. His son was going to inherit it in a strange kingly way. I thought I think the interregnum is a fascinating part of English history, and I think it's fascinating because I wasn't really that aware of it until about 10 years ago, and I sort of looked into having to stumble across it in a history book. So therefore, I find it fascinating, and assume everybody else will. But I did attend all the real people that are mentioned in this book, whether they be Dr. Moray or
Leeuwenhoek.
Yeah, Anthony von Leeuwenhoek, who was a lens grinder from Delft, and he in fact invented the microscope. All these people are Tom Cruise. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a real American movie star. They're all real, and I think I just quite enjoy mixing fact and fiction and blurring the lines. I guess I like having my cake and eating it as well. And even the science, as much as it can be accurate, is as accurate as I can make it. Because I think when you play around with time, when you do a time travel story, you really owe it to the reader to be as absolutely airtight as possible. And someone's going to ask me a question about Back to the Future, I hope, in a minute. And it has to really bear up to scrutiny, because there's nothing worse than coming across a time paradox story and finding a flaw in it. It really does unravel and make the whole thing disappear up its own arse. So it was important to me, and I did research it quite a bit, and I think that's probably why it did take a lot of time. And I also went off into little strange areas that just I found interesting, and became very boring at dinner parties for a couple of weeks as a result of it.
Sean, I'm sorry, what is the Back to the Future question that you don't want to ask so we can ask it?
All right, well, the question, it's in Back to the Future 2. Who's seen Back to the Future 2? Okay, right. You know when old Biff... I'm going to bore you with this. You know when old Biff steals the DeLorean in 2015, I think, goes back to 55, gives young Biff the almanac that he's stolen, and then he gets back in the DeLorean, old Biff, and goes back to 2015 so that Doc and Marty can get back in the DeLorean unbeknownst to them that old Biff has taken it, go back to 1984, and then they find it's all changed. It's all changed because old Biff gave the almanac to himself back in 1955. I don't understand how old Biff, if he's done that and changed the future, could have taken the DeLorean back to the unchanged 2015. That's the problem I have with it. That to me doesn't make any sense. Surely that future would have changed because of the handing over. Are you with me? Yeah, you with me?
I think it's impossible to see a time travel movie with anyone and not argue at the end of it. 12 Monkeys is another good example where everyone argues, but hang on, surely, who's the other person on the plane? He wasn't killed. And by the way, I agree with you 100% on that. And at the time I was very angry.
Well, hang on, what about in Back to the Future 3?
No, I didn't go there.
When Marty meets his great paternal grandfather, and it looks like him. That's fine. I can understand that, why he would look like his own paternal great-great-great-grandfather. But why does the great-great-great-grandmother on the paternal side look like Leah Thompson?
And how how can Paddy Duke have an identical cousin?
Yeah, that's right. That's
no,
right. It's only a movie. It's only a TV show.
Terminator 2. I mean, there's a terrible one in Terminator 2 where he's got to prevent the death of himself in order to... Is this right? His birth will be assured? Help me here. I'm drowning. Look, any more questions from the audience? This is a rare opportunity. Please take full advantage.
Yes, madam.
When I walked in, I was amazed to see a hardback book sitting there, and I didn't even know at that point that it had the coloured end pieces, the marbling, until I saw you flipping through the pages earlier, and of course the special theme. And until, of course, you spoke about it and said why, that was going to be one of my questions, why you've gone down that track. So, this is just a very basic question. You talked about e-books.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, are you going to put that out in a paperback? Is it going to e-book? And my question really is, as an author, do you get the same money for each of them?
I don't know. This is my first foray into novel writing, so I'm not familiar at all. But I'm sure it is coming out as an e-book. I think that's the inevitability of that. I don't think it necessarily means that it should, nor should it ever exclude having a beautiful book that you can hold in your hands and smell. You can't smell a Kindle, can you? You know, you look a bit weird if you did that. But there are some people who swear by them, you know, who love the clarity of the print and love the portability of it. I don't know. I have several, almost 8, I think, bookshelves in a room groaning with old books, really old books. And I actually spent a great portion of my 30s and 40s tracking down books that I had as a kid. And I cheat a bit because I go online and get them from England or America or something. But just old books that are more or less the same ones I had when I was a kid. My father burnt them all. It sounds more sinister than it is. Yeah, he burnt them all. No, he thought, oh, well, he's moved out of home, he doesn't need all this stuff, so all my games, all my notes, all my things, I had in boxes. He just had a big bonfire one day, and they all went on my lovely Rupert, the Bear albums.
Oh, no.
So I've spent a small fortune trying to track him down. But anyway, that is, you know, I've jokingly suggested to Fran that this is my first and only novel, you know, because I'm completely bereft of ideas now, because everything I ever thought of has gone into that book. I'm an empty cartridge now.
I don't think it'll be the last book. I certainly hope it's not the last book we see from Shaun Micallef, because this one's a real winner. Congratulations, Hardy Grant, on publishing such a fine piece of literature. Congratulations, Shaun.
Thank you.
You'll be signing books up the back of the room.
Oh, well, I'm more than happy to, and it'd be nice to say hello. Thank you.